You want to know about savage revenge? Let me tell you about the man who transformed the neighborhood's biggest eyesore into a 50,000 per year lesson in humility. And no, he didn't just build a fence. What Jeff Morrison did was so brilliantly vindictive that even the lawyers whistled in admiration. Look, everybody's got that one story about HOA drama, right? But this is the stuff of suburban legend. I'm talking about a man who turned a mosquito-infested swamp into his personal kingdom, all while legally turning his neighbors' own greed against them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. When Jeffy Morrison pulled up to 42 Willowbrook Lane in his silver Audi, he wasn't looking at the three-car garage or the granite countertops. His attention remained fixed on what the realtor desperately tried to ignore: a stagnant pond that smelled like forgotten promises and broken dreams. That's just, well, it's been an ongoing discussion with the HOA, the realtor stammered, her perfectly manicured nails clicking nervously against her clipboard. Jeff smirked. He'd spent 15 years creating algae filtration systems before selling his company for 8 figures. What others saw as a problem, he saw as potential. How long has it been an ongoing discussion? Oh, maybe 5 years, she hedged. He later discovered it was closer to 15. Over the next 6 months, while his neighbors obsessed over leaf blower noise ordinances and mailbox heights, Jeff studied his swamp. He noted the bacterial content, measured the depth variations, and calculated the ecosystem disruption. Every evening he'd stand by the pond, plotting its transformation like a general surveying a battlefield. Patricia Worthington, the HOA president, first noticed Jeff's interest during one of her surprise inspections. She'd developed a reputation for these, swooping down on properties like a suburban vulture, searching for code violations. "Mr. Morrison, whatever are you doing out here in the mud?" Jeff didn't turn around. "Assessing. The pond is community property managed by the HOA. Managed loosely, it seems." He picked up a handful of muck, letting it drip through his fingers. "pH balance is off. Anaerobic conditions. Basically a breeding ground for everything you don't want." Patricia's heels sank into the soft ground as she approached. "We're hoping to drain it entirely, actually. Turn it into something more useful." "Such as?" "Well, the board has received some interesting proposals. Retail development, perhaps. Bring some amenities to the neighborhood." Jeff finally looked at her. Really looked, and saw the truth in her shifty eyes. "Retail, huh? Nothing concrete yet." "Right." He wiped his hands on his jeans. "Well, while you're having your important discussions, I'll be making improvements." "That's not necessary. Neither is letting a pond turn toxic on your watch. Yet here we are." News travels fast in Willowbrook, especially when it involves someone breaking unwritten rules. Within weeks, Jeff's neighbors split into 2 camps: the curious and the concerned. Tom Hendricks from 3 houses down began stopping by during his evening walks. "Heard you're fixing up the pond." "Someone has to," Jeff replied, not pausing in his work. "HOA approves?" "HOAs had 20 years to approve. At some point, inaction becomes permission." Tom chuckled nervously. The man was a retired accountant, with a pathological need to avoid conflict. Patricia mentioned Thompson Retail might be interested in the space. Jeff's hands stilled for a moment before continuing. Thompson Retail. The name clicked immediately. A local developer known for aggressive tactics and deep pockets. "Interesting timing," Jeff mused. "How so?" "Nothing. Just interesting." Over the following months, Jeff methodically stripped away years of neglect. His pond became simultaneously his obsession and his meditation. Each weekend found him waist-deep in water, installing native aquatic plants, balancing chemical levels, and crafting a filtration system that would make MIT engineers jealous. Sarah Chen, who lived directly opposite the pond, watched with growing admiration from her kitchen window. During one of Jeff's longer sessions, she brought him coffee. "You're really making a difference," she said, surveying the crystallizing water. "It's not about making a difference. It's about doing what should have been done. The HOA might not see it that way." Jeff took a sip of coffee, noting it was exactly how he liked it. Black, no sugar. "Let them look. See how long their complaints hold up when they're standing next to clear water instead of a swamp." Sarah smiled. "For what it's worth, my kids love watching the changes. They've never seen clean water here before." 2 months later, Jeff introduced fish. First minnows, then bass fingerlings, and finally Japanese koi. The pond transformed from murky eyesore to neighborhood crown jewel. Property values began ticking upward, but Patricia Worthington wasn't watching property values. She was watching Jeff Morrison. The official notice arrived on expensive stationery, delivered by registered mail on a Tuesday morning. Jeff read it while standing at his pond's edge, the koi swirling in excitement at his feet. Notice of violation and fine assessment. Dear Mr. Morrison, after extensive review by the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association Board, it has been determined that you have undertaken an unauthorized landscaping and environmental modification project on community property. Section 4.3 of our bylaws, which you acknowledged upon purchase of your property, clearly states that all modifications to common areas require prior board approval and licensed contractor oversight. Furthermore, Section 8.12 specifically addresses water features and ecosystem modifications, requiring environmental impact studies and municipal permits. Your actions have violated both community standards and county regulations. Having consulted with our legal counsel, we hereby impose a fine of $300,000 for these violations, plus an additional $15,000 in legal fees. Total amount due, $315,000, payable within 30 days. Jeff read the notice 3 times. Then he photographed it. Then he calmly walked to his study and began mapping his counterattack. The neighborhood grapevine went into overdrive. Within hours, everyone knew about the $250,000 fine. "It's insane," Tom Hendricks confided to Jeff during an impromptu meeting at the local coffee shop. "Patricia's getting pushback from some residents. Martin's wife is particularly upset. Their property value went up 12% since you cleaned the pond." "But let me guess," Jeff said. "The Thompsons are firmly in Patricia's corner." Tom shifted uncomfortably. "They've been hosting meetings, talking about bringing progress to the neighborhood." "Progress. Right. Jeff, what are you going to do?" Jeff stirred his espresso, watching the sugar dissolve. "I'm going to accept their invitation to speak at the next HOA meeting." The Willowbrook Community Center had never seen a crowd like this. Every chair was filled, with people standing along the walls. Jeff arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a crisp navy suit, the same one he'd worn when closing the sale of his last company. Patricia called for order, her gavel thundering against the podium. "This emergency meeting has been called to address Mr. Morrison's flagrant violation of community standards." "Before you continue," Jeff interrupted, rising smoothly to his feet, "I'd like to present my findings." "Mr. Morrison, you don't have the floor. Do you want to explain to everyone here why you're pursuing a $300,000 fine while simultaneously courting Thompson Retail for a shopping center development?" Jeff's voice carried perfectly, practiced from countless boardroom confrontations. The room erupted. Patricia's face flushed crimson. "These accusations are documented." Jeff clicked a remote, activating the community center's projector. Emails appeared on screen, communications between Patricia and Thompson's representatives. These, fortunately, became part of the public record when I filed a FOIA request with the county. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Patricia frantically shuffled her papers. "Let's be clear," Jeff continued. "The pond has been a toxic eyesore for 2 decades, but the moment I improve it, suddenly there's a massive fine and a development company shows interest. Coincidence? Linda Martinez, A vocal community member stood up. Are you saying the HOA is getting kickbacks? I'm saying Thompson Retail has donated $75,000 to the HOA's discretionary fund this year alone. Previous years? Zero. The room exploded into arguments. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Patricia lost control of the meeting entirely. Bill Thompson, the retail developer's son and a resident of Willowbrook, attempted damage control. The shopping center would bring jobs and convenience. At what cost? Jeff countered. Besides destroying a natural ecosystem, Thompson's environmental study, which I've also obtained, shows their drainage plans would flood at least 7 properties on the south side of the development. The room grew quiet as affected homeowners connected the dots. You knew, Sarah Chen said, standing up slowly. You all knew and said nothing. The meeting descended into chaos. Patricia adjourned abruptly, but the damage was done. The community had fractured. What happened next, few saw coming. Jeff didn't fight the fine in court. Instead, he visited his real estate agent. I want to buy property, he told Elena Rodriguez, spreading maps across her conference table. In Willowbrook? No, around the pond. Elena studied the maps, confusion growing. Jeff, that area is almost entirely community property. Almost. Entirely. It took Elena 3 days to understand Jeff's plan. There were 2 privately owned lots adjacent to the pond, considered unbuildable due to wetland restrictions. Plus, Mrs. Henderson's property, the widow who'd been trying to sell for years to fund her move to Florida. That gives you, maybe, a 15-foot strip surrounding the pond, Elena calculated. Jeff smiled. Exactly. Mrs. Henderson was ecstatic to finally sell. The 2 vacant lots required more convincing, but Jeff's cash offers were impossible to refuse. Within 6 weeks, he owned a narrow ribbon of land that completely encircled the HOA's pond property. Patricia discovered the maneuver when the new survey stakes appeared. What have you done? She demanded, cornering Jeff at his mailbox. I've protected my investment, Jeff replied calmly. The HOA can't access the pond. Sure they can. There's plenty of access from within the water itself. The association is welcome to swim across any time. This is outrageous. You're landlocking community property. Your community property, which you were so eager to sell to developers. Jeff pulled out his phone, showing her photos of construction diagrams. I've obtained permits for a 10-foot security fence. Installation begins Monday. Patricia's lawyer tried to challenge the move, but HOA bylaws had no provisions for what Jeff had done. The county supported his right to fence his property, and the wetland restrictions actually worked in his favor, preventing the HOA from claiming any access rights. The fence went up first. Elegant black metal with geometric patterns, beautiful and impenetrable. Then came the real construction. A luxury spa and wellness retreat that would make Sedona jealous. Jeff called it Morrison Waters. He hired a celebrity spa designer from Los Angeles. The transformation included natural mineral hot springs, he'd discovered sulfur deposits, a meditation garden with rare orchids, Himalayan salt therapy caves, outdoor massage platforms overlooking the water, a boutique hotel with 6 luxury cottages, an organic greenhouse and vertical gardens. The construction took 8 months. During this time, the neighborhood watched with a mixture of awe and horror as their former eyesore transformed into an exclusive retreat. Patricia and her supporters tried to maintain their retail development push, but without direct pond access, Thompson's plans crumbled. The environmental impact alone killed most investor interest. On the day Morrison Waters opened, Jeff unveiled his masterstroke, an exclusive membership system. Morrison Waters membership. Tiers Platinum, $50,000 annually. Gold, $35,000 annually. Silver, $20,000 annually. Limited availability. Special corporate rate, $100,000 annually. The Thompsons, Richard, Bill, and their families who'd been Patricia's staunchest supporters, received personalized rejection letters. Due to concerns about the environmental impact of your rental properties and previous business practices, we regret to inform you that membership at Morrison Waters is not available to the Thompson family at this time. The slap landed perfectly. The Thompsons owned 8 rental properties in Willowbrook, all beginning to show signs of deferred maintenance. Their attempt to build a shopping center had been less about community improvement and more about liquidating assets. Over the next year, Willowbrook's social order completely transformed. Properties with direct views of Morrison Waters doubled in value. Jeff's former critics found themselves trying to curry favor. Patricia attempted an apology. Perhaps we started off on the wrong foot, but was met with a simple response. Platinum membership applications open next quarter. Standard rate applies. Tom Hendricks, the conflict-averse accountant, eventually purchased a gold membership. My wife insisted, he explained sheepishly during his first visit. Smart woman, Jeff replied, showing him to the meditation gardens. Sarah Chen became Morrison Waters' first platinum member. Her children now spent afternoons at the retreat's education center, learning about aquatic ecosystems from PhD scientists. Jeff had hired? Was it worth it? Sarah asked one evening as they watched sunset paint the water gold. The question isn't whether it was worth it, Jeff replied, savoring his wine. The question is whether they learned anything. 18 months after Morrison Waters opened, Randall Thompson, patriarch of the Thompson family and CEO of Thompson Retail, requested a private meeting. They met at an upscale steakhouse downtown. Randall arrived 10 minutes late. A power play Jeff had seen countless times. You've made your point, Randall began, cutting straight to business. Have I? My son's family lives in that neighborhood. His children watch that pond every day but can't access it. They can, for $50,000 a year. Randall's jaw tensed. He slid an envelope across the table. $2 million. Walk away. Sell the surroundings. Properties back to the HOA for a reasonable price. Jeff opened the envelope, pulled out the check, examined it carefully, then tore it into precise quarters. I'll make you a counteroffer, Jeff said. Your daughter-in-law Emily runs that wellness blog, correct? Mindful living in the suburbs? Yes. Annual membership for the Thompson family. $100,000. Non-negotiable. And she writes one honest review of our facilities within the first month. That's absurd. That's business. You wanted to turn a natural ecosystem into a parking lot. I turned your parking lot into paradise. Now you pay to get in. Patricia Worthington stepped down as HOA president 6 months later, citing health reasons. She moved to a retirement community in Arizona where, ironically, she had to ask permission to plant flowers. Her replacement, Michael Chen, no relation to Sarah, reached out to Jeff immediately. I believe we got off on the wrong foot as a community, Michael said during their first meeting. Did we? The HOA would like to negotiate limited public access to the gardens. Perhaps a community day once a month? Jeff considered this. Board member rate, $25,000 annually for supervised access to the lower gardens. 2 hours per month. Maximum 15 people. Michael blinked. That's steep. That's karma with compound interest. Exactly 2 years after the initial dispute, Emily Thompson became Morrison Waters' most prolific social media promoter. Her review titled, From Community Crisis to Luxury Oasis, One Family's Journey, went viral in local lifestyle circles. The Thompson family paid their dues quietly, annually, in full. Richard Thompson, once Jeff's staunchest opponent, now led morning yoga sessions for guests. My doctor recommended it, he explained to anyone who asked. The retail development never materialized. The lots Thompson had optioned were sold to a sustainable housing cooperative instead. Morrison Waters' success spawned copycats across the state. Other communities began questioning their HOA's handling of common areas. Several similar disputes resulted in private takeovers, though none quite as dramatic as Jeff's. The retreat employed 27 local residents. Property taxes increased across Willowbrook as values rose. The mosquito problem that had plagued the neighborhood for decades disappeared entirely. Local news featured the transformation in a segment called "When David Outplayed Goliath." Jeff declined most interview requests, preferring to let his work speak for itself. 5 years after buying his house, Jeff stood exactly where he had that first day, surveying his kingdom. The pond sparkled like polished obsidian, reflecting the sunset. Membership had a 3-year waiting list. Sarah Chen found him there, as she often did for their evening wine ritual. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About what?" "The nuclear option. The absolute obliteration of your opponents." Jeff sipped his wine, considering. "You know what bothered me most about Patricia and her crew? Not the fine. Not even the attempted theft of public resources. What then? The assumption that I'd just take it. That improvement equals vulnerability. That being a good neighbor meant being a doormat." Sarah clinked her glass against his. "Well, you certainly corrected that assumption. Today, Morrison Waters Retreat is mentioned in Architectural Digest and Wellness Tourism Guides." Jeff expanded operations to include corporate retreats, bringing Fortune 500 companies to Willowbrook. The original HOA fine? Jeff framed it and hung it in his office, titled "The $300,000 Investment Opportunity." When newcomers ask longtime residents about the imposing fence around the beautiful pond, the responses vary. "That's Morrison Waters. Best spa in 3 counties. That's what happens when you mess with the wrong person. That's the most expensive lesson our HOA ever paid for." But my favorite response came from Tom Hendricks, who told new neighbors, "See that pond? That's what happens when someone turns spite into sanctuary." Last month, Jeff appeared on Built to Last, a podcast about strategic business decisions. The host asked about his secret to turning problems into profits. "Simple," Jeff said. "People confuse confrontation with weakness. They see someone improving a situation and think it's an invitation to take advantage. But here's what they don't understand. Sometimes the most powerful move is to stop playing their game entirely." "What do you mean?" "I didn't beat the HOA at their own game. I took my ball, built my own court, and charged them entrance fees. The moment you stop reacting and start rebuilding the rules to your advantage, that's when you win." The interviewer laughed. "Any advice for listeners facing their own HOA battles?" "Document everything, know your rights, and never ever underestimate the power of turning someone's neglect into your opportunity. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is forcing people to pay for the privilege of enjoying what they tried to destroy." Listeners of that episode often comment that Jeff sounds remarkably calm for someone who engineered such comprehensive revenge. But anyone who's met him understands. This wasn't emotional. It was simply business conducted by someone who refuses to be anyone's doormat. The last time anyone checked, the waiting list for Morrison Waters Platinum membership had grown to 5 years. The latest applicant? Patricia Worthington's daughter, who apparently wants to reconnect with her Willowbrook roots. Jeff's response to her application remains pending. After all, some lessons are worth savoring slowly. Here's what the business books don't tell you about revenge. The best kind isn't hot or fiery. It's methodical. It builds wealth while proving a point. It creates something beautiful from something destroyed. Jeff Morrison didn't just win a battle against an HOA. He rewrote the rules of suburban warfare. He proved that sometimes the most powerful response to no is building something so magnificent that your enemies have no choice but to ask permission to enter. And permission, as every Willowbrook resident now knows, costs exactly what the market will bear. The real genius? He made his victory so appealing that people lined up to fund it. He transformed community spite into personal profit, proving that in real estate, as in life, the sweetest victories are the ones your opponents pay for. That pond they tried to bury became the fountain from which Jeff's fortune flowed. And every time a former enemy writes their membership check, they're reminded of their own hubris. Some say Jeff went too far. Others claim he didn't go far enough. But ask yourself this: in a world where good citizens are often punished for initiative, isn't it refreshing when someone rewrites the rules entirely? When someone transforms hell no into pay me? Maybe we need more Jeff Morrisons. Or maybe we just need to stop messing with people who know how to build their own castles. Either way, there's a beautiful pond in Willowbrook where mosquitoes used to breed, and fortunes are now made. Where compliance fees became membership dues. Where a man named Jeff turned the most expensive mistake of his neighbors' lives into the most exclusive address in town. They say he's even thinking about expanding. There's another neglected water feature 2 towns over, just waiting for someone with vision, and patience, and the ability to turn public property into private paradise. Some people collect stamps. Others collect coins. Jeff Morrison collects HOA president's tears, and he charges admission to watch them dry. That's not revenge. That's poetry with a price tag. And the final bill? Well, that's between Jeff and his accountant. But rumor has it, it's compounding nicely.